What's up, Rainbow Heads? Welcome back to my channel. For those of you just joining me for the first time, my name is Caitlin Ford. I am a professional hairstylist as well as an award-winning hair colorist who specializes in really weird hair color. Today's video has actually been very highly requested. For those of you who are familiar with me, you know that last year I went through an accident and it resulted in the loss of my index finger on my right hand. A lot of you have found me from my original storytime video where I talk about what happened to me and how I lost my finger. If you haven't watched my original storytime video, I'm going to go ahead and insert a card up here. I highly recommend you watch that video first before you watch this one if you're interested, just because you're probably going to be very confused about what's going on if you watch this video first. And since it's been a little bit over a year since that happened, I have had so many requests for an update, so many questions about my recovery and all kinds of other stuff. So I really wanted to do this video to kind of cover all of that. So that's what we're going to do today, and we're going to do it in the get ready with me format, which is why my face looks like such a disaster right now. After today's video, I don't know that I'm going to be doing any more videos about my hand. And at the end of this video, I'll address why I'm not really planning on doing any further updates or story times about my hand. I am super eager to get some foundation on my face, so let's go ahead and jump into this get ready with me. Oh, also before we get started, just so you know, there is going to be a little bit of medically graphic content in this video. So if you're squeamish, if you get freaked out by seeing like stitches and stuff like that, there are going to be images of that in this video, just as a fair warning. So as I said, it's been about a year now since I had my accident and cut my finger off. And you guys have just had so many questions about what that's been like for me and how I sort of relearned how to use my hand. You've had a lot of questions about what my mental state was like, what I went through mentally, if I struggled mentally, and a lot of other really interesting questions. So what we're gonna do here in this video is we're gonna start off where I left off in my last video, which was basically leaving the hospital and going home. So yeah, where we last left off in this harrowing adventure of me chopping my finger off is leaving the hospital and coming home and recovering from the whole situation. Now, what's really crazy about all of this is, had my finger been successfully reattached, I would have actually had a much longer recovery time than what I actually had. Ugh, these goddamn little baby hairs are just in the way. Gotta use like 6 bajillion clips in my bangs to hold my hair back just so I can get my foundation on. So yeah, what's crazy about it is I would have had a way longer recovery time had my reimplantation been successful. So what happened was I had my very last surgery where they removed my index finger. They sent me back to my room for like literally I think like 2 hours or so. And then the doctor came in, they handed me a bunch of drugs, instructed me on how to use them, and proceeded to tell me that I could go back to work in 2 weeks after having my finger amputated. This foundation is definitely not the right color. Do I look jaundice? Does this foundation make me look like I have a liver issue? I think this color I got after I went on vacation and I had a little bit of a tan, so it's not really fitting very well right now, but we'll just deal with that. So yeah, my doctors told me that I could go back to work 2 weeks after having my finger chopped off, which was really freaking crazy because had my implantation been successful, I would have needed 8 weeks of recovery time, so 8 weeks of not working at all, and then I would have needed 6 months of physical therapy. So that was kind of the catch-22 of the whole situation, is that had my finger been successfully been re-implanted, it would have been just a way bigger ordeal to recover from that whole process. Not that it wouldn't have been worth it, obviously, to keep my finger. I think most people would agree that would be a pretty small price to pay. So yeah, I went home just a few hours after my last surgery after having my finger removed, which was just super crazy. It was probably like 2, I think, in the afternoon at that point. And a lot of people asked me about like what my mental state was like after this whole ordeal, and I'm definitely not going to lie. Like in my original storytime video, I made a lot of jokes, I made light of the situation, and genuinely that is how I deal with hard stuff, is with dark humor, because I mean, that's just how I deal with things, I don't know. But in all honesty, there were quite a few things that were extremely difficult, especially mentally in the beginning. And especially those first few days and weeks at home were were pretty tough and pretty challenging. My first several nights home, I had a really, really hard time sleeping. A lot of people have asked me about flashbacks, and yes, I had a lot of flashbacks after my accident. I had very severe flashbacks in the beginning after my accident for the first several weeks and months after, mostly when I was trying to sleep, but it would also happen sometimes during the day. It would just kind of like pop in my head, and I would get this like, just like a gut-wrenching feeling. I don't know if any of you guys, if you've ever been through something like really hard or challenging in your life and you think about it and you remember it and you just get this like knot in your stomach over it. That's what would happen. So my first night home, I really did not sleep at all. It was so hard to sleep, even though I was on a ton of drugs, which should have made me pass out. Pretty much like in the beginning, every time I closed my eyes to go to sleep, I would think about, it wasn't even that I was trying to, it would just come into my head, totally like an unwanted thought. And I would just see it happening over and over and over again, because when this situation happened, when I cut my finger off, I obviously was witness to everything. Like I saw it happen. It's crazy because it happened so quickly, but it was almost as if it happened in slow motion at the same time. If any of you guys have ever been in like a car accident or anything like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a really, really wild feeling. And yeah, I would just close my eyes and I would just see it happening over and over again. And not only that, but when I would drift off to sleep, I would basically have just horrible nightmares. And mostly I would have these like super realistic nightmares that I had my accident, but it was like even worse than what it actually was. So I would go to sleep and I would dream that I cut off more of my fingers. I would dream that I cut off half my hand. I would dream that I cut off my whole hand. And those nightmares were just so realistic. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, like in a cold sweat. And so, yeah, those first few days and nights were just very challenging, to say the least. My first night home, like I said, I could not sleep at all. I could not sleep at all. And I actually, at one point in the middle of the night, I just had this impulse to get up and like get out of bed. My husband had brought the table saw back into the basement and I knew it was downstairs. And I just got this really crazy impulse that I just wanted to go downstairs and I wanted to take a look at it. I don't know what it was. I was just like, I want to see it. I just want to see it. I want to see it. I just need to see it and kind of like, I don't know, feel a little bit more like what happened, because at this point I was still so just like shell-shocked by everything that it didn't feel real. And another crazy thing is that at this point I hadn't even seen my hand without my finger yet, because when I got out of surgery they had bandaged it up. And so I didn't get to see it without my finger at all, and I wasn't going to be able to see it without my finger until I went in for my very first bandage change. Kind of my very first inklings of phantom feelings, which I'm going to be getting into phantom feelings a little bit later in this video, were on those first couple of days, because when you lose a body part, your body does not deal with that really well, or your brain doesn't deal with that very well, doesn't process it very well. It's not a normal thing, you know? And so basically it's almost like your brain lies to you. I just had this crazy feeling that my finger was still there, but it was like folded down underneath my bandage. Like it legitimately felt like my finger was there, but it was folded down under the bandage. So it was really strange, because in my head, obviously I knew, you know, I'd gone through this and my finger was absolutely, it was gone. But for whatever reason, my brain did not want to fully accept that. So I think the first night, it was just kind of like, you know what, I just want to go down in the basement. I want to look at this thing. I want to look at the saw. My husband had also brought in the wood that I was working on. I wanted to see, you know, the piece of wood, and I just wanted to kind of absorb that reality. So I got out of bed and I went down into the basement and I looked at the saw, and there were big fat dried up drops of blood all over the top of it and down the side of it. And I just remember picking up that piece of wood that I was cutting, and there was a cut halfway through it. And it was just wild, because at the very beginning of the cut, it was very clean, and there was no blood or anything right at the very beginning of that cut, but then at the end where the cut stopped halfway through the wood, it was just like a blossom of dried blood on the wood. And so it was just really crazy to kind of see this stuff. But for whatever reason, I just felt like I needed to look at it. I needed to look at it. I needed to kind of tell myself that, yes, this is real. This is what happened. And we need to kind of start the next phases of this as far as kind of moving forward. 3 days after my final surgery, I went back for my very first bandage change as well as my very first occupational therapy session. And that's when I got to see my hand for the very first time. And I'm actually going to go ahead and insert a video right here of what my hands looked like right after the nurse practitioner had removed my bandages and helped me clean it and everything like that. So this is what my hand looked like with all the stitches in it and everything like that. When I first saw my hand, I just felt like it, for whatever reason, really reminded me of Oogie Boogie's body from The Nightmare Before Christmas. I think just from like how swollen it was, and then also just the stitches, it just was like fat and pillowy like Oogie Boogie and just had those stitches, and it just reminded me of him for some reason. I'm just a weirdo who makes very strange associations like that, I guess. After my bandage change, I had my very first occupational therapy session, which was with a different occupational therapist than who was on my care team from my original Storytime video. During this session, my occupational therapist fitted me for a new splint, which in some ways was almost like verification to me that something had gone wrong during my hospital stay, because it just was very apparent to me that this woman that I was working with the second time was just a lot more experienced than the occupational therapist I was with initially. When she made my splint, she did not struggle. She didn't look like she was struggling with it. She didn't look like she was hesitant with it. She really seemed like she knew what she was doing. And not only that, when she made my splint, she literally made it in a fraction of the time that the other lady had been trying to make my splint in. During this visit, my OT also gave me several exercises to do. I think there was a total of 5 exercises. I'm going to go ahead and insert some videos here of me doing these exercises initially. This was on the exact same day as my initial occupational therapy session. The very first exercise was just holding my hand straight with my fingers straight. The second exercise was a straight fist, so I basically had to fold my fingers down straight, but also make a fist at the same time. The third exercise, I basically had to make almost kind of this like monkey paw sort of shape with my hand. The fourth exercise was a composite fist, which is basically just a fist that you would make if you're going to punch someone in the face. And the fifth exercise was something that my occupational therapist referred to as a tabletop, which is folding my fingers down straight perpendicular to my palm. And these exercises look like really, really simple, but trust me, my hand was so incredibly swollen and tight that it was just very, very difficult to perform those exercises initially. I was also basically told that with my splint, I really only needed to wear that if I was leaving the house, just to sort of protect my stitches, just give me a little bit of extra protection from people possibly bumping into my hand or something like that. There was not really a whole lot of damage that could be done to my hand at this point, because it wasn't as if I was healing broken bones or anything like that, because my finger was removed completely. So they took it all the way down to my knuckle. My doctor told me that he would prefer for me to just kind of use my hand as much as possible and as normal as possible within reason, without causing myself pain and without doing anything that was going to rip my sutures or anything like that. Because when you have an injury like this, it's almost better to kind of like make yourself sort of get used to using your hand that way. The more you use it, the less scar tissue is going to build up, and the less scar tissue that builds up, the more flexibility and function you're going to have. And that's why it's really important to make sure that if you ever have any kind of injury like this happen and you're given occupational therapy to do, you really need to follow through with those exercises, because you can actually do more damage to yourself in the long run if you don't. Lucky for me, before this whole craziness happened, we had just gotten a Nintendo Switch, and I had just been a few hours into playing Zelda Breath of the Wild. So basically the majority of my recovery and therapy was actually using my Nintendo Switch controller and playing Breath of the Wild, which is a super fun game. If you guys haven't played it, it's It's a ton of fun. Definitely highly recommend it. I also ended up taking 4 weeks off from work to recover instead of the 2 that my doctor recommended, just because I knew that I was going to just need a little bit more mentally than 2 weeks. I know that some of you guys are hairstylists as well, and you can totally relate to this. When you do hair, you form like really, really strong bonds with your clients. They ask you about your life. They ask you about all the current events going on in your life, etc. You just kind of end up repeating the same stories over and over again to your clients. So I just wanted to make sure that I was kind of fully mentally prepared to recount this story again and again and again, because I knew that my clients obviously were going to have a lot of questions about what happened to me, what I went through, and all of that fun stuff. So I just really wanted to make sure that I was mentally in a place where I could handle recounting that story again and again and again, because it was going to be a lot. You know, sometimes that can feel like a lot, even if it's just kind of going over your daily life, you know, telling the same exact thing over and over again. It can be a little bit exhausting. So yeah, I took off 4 weeks total and laid on the couch and played Zelda Breath of the Wild. I did my exercises. And in addition to my exercises, I also had a pair of hair cutting shears at home that I would open and close. So if I was sitting and watching TV, I would just open and close my scissors over and over and over again. For me, that was a really good moment. I actually picked up my scissors for the very first time the same day that I did my very first occupational therapy. I was super eager to pick up my scissors. That was the one thing that was just very, very concerning and weighing heavy on my mind. Was I, had gone through this, and I didn't know how my hand was going to function with work, and obviously that was my biggest concern and my biggest priority. Now, I will say, when I went to the emergency room initially, one of the very first surgeons that I met did tell me that, crazily enough, your index finger is the most disposable finger on your hand. I had no idea. Never would have guessed that. But she basically explained to me that everything that you do with your index finger, you can create the same sort of fine pinch motion with your middle finger and your thumb as you can with your index finger and your thumb. It's almost as if your middle finger is there as a backup in case, you're a dum-dum and decide to chop your finger off on a table saw. So yeah, if you ever plan on cutting a finger off, aim for your index finger. She told me that the recovery time would probably not be that bad, but I think it's one thing to hear that from somebody, and then it's one thing to kind of put that into action. And I had so much anxiety and worry about what the function of my hand was going to be like after this whole debacle. So that moment where I picked up my scissors for the first time and started using them, that was definitely a big moment for me, and it just felt like such a win and such a victory. And it really helped put me at peace as far as knowing that I was going to be able to continue doing what I love. That was definitely the thing that first crossed my mind. Like, literally the second that my accident happened was, oh my gosh, did I just screw myself? Did I just ruin my life, basically? Because I have a lot of passion for what I do. I love doing hair, and I don't know what I would do if that weren't a possibility for me. So that was definitely something that just weighed so heavily on me. And, the fact that I had to go through days of not knowing if I was going to be able to use my hand in that way again was just really, really hard. It's just crazy, because I think that the number one question I get asked is how the recovery was physically and how I was able to get back to work so fast and all of that fun stuff. And that really is why. It's because I cut off the most disposable finger that you could possibly lose. And physically, the recovery from that was, as crazy as it sounds, it was not that bad. It really was more just the mental recovery, as well as the flashbacks and nightmares and that sort of thing. That was a lot harder to deal with. To be perfectly honest, I have found that there is almost nothing that I can't do since my accident that I couldn't do before. Initially, I did have some loss in hand strength. If you've ever lost a finger, or if you lose a finger, you will lose hand strength because of that. But even my hand strength, I have recovered that quite a bit. At first, I had a hard time doing things like opening bottles, like twisting open bottles and twisting open jars and things like that. I did struggle a bit when I went back to work with certain hair products, like hair products that have like the spray tops and stuff. Those were a little hard for me to grip and spray down at the same time. So those were definitely a challenge, and they sometimes continue to be a challenge. But I've been able to kind of figure that out and work my way around it. After my initial occupational therapy session, I went back for one more session where we worked on something called desensitizing, which is basically trying to desensitize the nerves in your amputated area, because your nerves are just doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and they are extremely raw and extremely, extremely sensitive. So you basically kind of have to push your body past that point. So during that session, my occupational therapist made me this, like, it was a tongue compressor, so like a popsicle stick. And on each side of the popsicle stick, as well as each end of the popsicle stick, there was different types of fabric. So on one end, on one side was a piece of Velcro, like the hard part, like the scratchy part of the Velcro. Then on the other end was the soft part of the Velcro. And then on the other side of the tongue compressor was a piece of cotton fabric on one end, and then a sponge on the other end. And she basically instructed me to, anytime I was just sitting around, hanging out, watching TV, anything like that, just take that tool and rub it against the scarred area, tap it, just do all kinds of stuff, basically make my nerves go crazy, so that I would start to get used to touch in that area again. During that session, she also had me demonstrate my exercises for her, and that was basically when she said, you know what, you are good at this point. This was my, as I said, my second occupational therapy session. She said I was good. She was like, your, flexibility isn't 100% there yet. It's because your hand is not completely down from the swelling. This was about 2 weeks after my first session. I still had a little bit of swelling, a little bit of tightness, but she was like, your hand function is really great. She was like, I have no worries about you. And she basically told me I could make another appointment if I ever found that there was some action that I struggled performing. I could come in and we could work on that thing. But yeah, my surgeon was definitely right. There really was not a lot that I couldn't do after my surgery, which was just really such a blessing. It was really, really great to kind of come into that understanding for myself. Because as I said, it's one thing to hear that, it's another thing to put that stuff into action and to kind of have that reassurance that yes, you are going to be okay, like your life is not over just because this thing happened to you. So just as a summary of all of that, I ended up having 2 occupational therapy sessions. I was out of work for 4 weeks, and then I was able to go back to work and function pretty much how I functioned before. When I initially started doing hair again, I think I was running about 15 or so minutes late client to client, so not bad and honestly kind of typical. And I am just so grateful that it wasn't worse. I am so grateful that I did not screw up my hand more than I did, because I have definitely seen worse happen to people from table saws. A lot of you guys have shared with me on my original story time, you've shared with me stories of things that happened to other people with table saws, people that you know, and there is just a lot of really bad stuff that can happen with table saws. So I just kind of really have a huge sense of gratefulness that it wasn't worse. And it really is insane when you go through something like that, how much it kind of changes your perspective on life. And I just feel, I feel like I am a much more grateful person for what I have than I was before. Not that I was a particularly ungrateful person before. The fact that I have hands that I can use and create things with and be creative with and all this stuff, I felt very, very blessed, honestly, like #blessed, I know, like pumpkin spice latte and Ugg boots, but like I really did feel a sense of gratefulness, and I still do feel an enormous sense of gratefulness for the fact that I recovered pretty easily, and I was so lucky that this was not worse, because it could have been so much worse than what it was. One thing I get asked about all of the time is about phantom pains and phantom sensations, and yes, those are real. It was a real thing. It is still a real thing that I deal with from time to time although not nearly as severely as it was when I first had my accident. As I said earlier, I started having my very first phantom sensations almost immediately out of the gate. With just having my hand wrapped up and not being able to see my finger. I truly did physically feel like my finger was there, that it was just folded down underneath the bandage, which was really, really crazy. When that bandage first came off and I got to see my hand for the first time, it was like I knew that my finger wasn't there, but it was like, holy crap. Like, it was like, it kind of like triggered that thing in my brain that was like, oh yeah, that's gone now. All right. But the crazy thing about amputations is it's like your brain is just constantly confused about what is happening with your body. And so what happens when you have an amputation is your brain continues to try and send signals to your amputated body part. And because those signals don't reach down to the end of that body part, your nerves basically just kind of misfire and shoot those signals back to your brain, and it registers as pain. I know, really great. So it's different for different amputees. It's different for different types of amputations. Almost every single person who goes through an amputation ends up having some form of phantom feelings or phantom pains. It is extremely, extremely common. Now, I am very fortunate that I did not have a larger amputation, because usually people who have larger amputations deal with phantom feelings and phantom pains to a much larger extent than what I dealt with them, from what I understood. A lot of those people who lose arms and legs and full hands and stuff like that, a lot of times they deal with phantom pain and phantom sensations nonstop. Some people cannot get rid of those sensations, and they can be very, very hard to deal with. As far as phantom sensations go, a very, very common one is feeling like your body part is still there, but it feels like it's shrunk, like it feels like a micro-sized version of your body part is still there. I had sensations like that. As far as phantom pain goes, my phantom pain started about a week after I got home from my accident. And the main sensations that I had were basically, it would feel like my finger was still there, and it would feel like somebody was taking a pair of pliers and pinching my middle knuckle as hard as possible. Like, it literally felt like somebody was crushing my knuckle with a pair of pliers. And then the other main sensation that I would have is it would feel like somebody was taking a burning hot iron and just pressing down on the top of my finger. The phantom pains were the most aggressive at nighttime, which was very frustrating because I am a very pain tolerant person, and I think that I would have dealt okay with it if it were during the daytime. But at nighttime when I was sleeping, it was just, in addition to like the flashbacks and the nightmares and everything like this, you're also dealing with pain that's happening in your head, you know, which is really crazy. And even though I was on painkillers, and I was also on a nerve painkiller called gabapentin. Painkillers, and a lot of times even the stuff that's supposed to help with nerve issues, it just does not do a lot for phantom pains, because even though it is a legitimate thing, it's a legitimate thing that you're feeling, it's also kind of in your head at the same time. I know, weird, really hard to explain, but yeah, it's like it's happening, but it's also in your head at the same time. And so a lot of times medicines are pretty ineffective at addressing phantom pain. I still do have phantom pains from time to time, but mostly they are triggered when I sort of am unconsciously but consciously activating my finger that's not there anymore. This is really kind of hard to explain, but I'm going to explain it the best that I can. So obviously whenever you go to use a certain body part, it's not like you have to think in your head, like if you're walking, you don't have to think in your head, legs move, like one foot, then the next foot, then the next foot. You're not thinking about it. But there is an action that happens in your brain unconsciously that activates those body parts. And so anytime I would kind of be in my unconscious brain and go to perform an action with my hand, if in my unconscious brain I was kind of like activating that finger, or if I do activate that finger in my unconscious brain, because like I said, this does still happen from time to time, I will get a shooting pain in my finger, which is so just crazy. I also get phantom itching, which is really obnoxious, honestly. It feels like your body part is still there and you have some like crazy poison ivy or something like that on it. Every once in a while, I'll just get the sensation that my finger's there and I just want to scratch it so bad. It just gets so itchy. It's the weirdest thing. And literally touching this area around where my finger was, that has no effect on any of that. It is just, it's beyond bizarre, let me tell ya. But mostly to deal with that, because I've kind of recognized where I have activated my finger unconsciously, I just really try not to do that, which sounds very, very strange. So basically, I'm going to try to explain this to you guys. What I mean by this is, so my metacarpal bone, so this bone here that was formerly attached to my finger, is still there and I can still kind of activate it. See, if I move that, I can literally move that up and down. And so that's part of obviously an action of your finger when you move that up and down. And it's kind of hard if you have your finger, it's hard to kind of activate that without activating your entire finger. And so sometimes when I would go to do stuff, I would kind of activate this muscle here and move this a little bit. And when I do that, when I activate that, if I'm not looking at my hand while I do that, I will have phantom sensations and phantom pains. My doctors explained to me when I was kind of going through this and dealing with the phantom pains, they basically told me once you get back to work and you can actually see your hand while it's working, your brain's going to start to make that mind-body connection a lot more easily and the phantom pains will get better. I found that was super, super true. That is one great thing about if you're going to amputate a part of your body, having it be your finger, because you do tend to look at your hands when you work. It makes it a little bit easier to make that mind-body connection. It's easier for your body to kind of start to make that mind-body connection and deal with it and kind of make adjustments as needed. So yeah, I basically had most of my phantom pains up until I finally went back to work, and then they really started going away very, very quickly. Another question that I get all the time is about prosthetics, and I do not plan on getting a prosthetic because most finger prosthetics are designed to attach to a nub, and I don't have a nub. I literally have nothing there. I have nothing to attach a prosthetic to, and so if I wanted to wear a finger prosthetic, the only way that I could do that is I would have my prosthetic. There would have to be a strap that ran around my hand this way, and then it would need to attach to my wrist this way to even keep it on. The other thing is finger prosthetics are not very functional. Most of them are just kind of like silicone kind of prosthetics, and they're really just meant for appearances. They're not functional. And so for me, that just was not really worth it, because it would end up just getting in my way when I'm using my hands and doing hair and all of that fun stuff. So to me, a prosthetic just seems very impractical. I could see some people feeling kind of insecure and like wanting that. And I would definitely never ever insult somebody for wanting a prosthetic for, you know, the aesthetic. But for me, the aesthetic doesn't even really bother me enough to feel like I need a prosthetic. It definitely bothered me a lot more in the beginning, but now I've really kind of gotten used to it. And what's really awesome, and I get this comment all the time here, is that most people don't even notice that I'm missing a finger. You know, it's just not really big enough of an amputation for it to really be in your face and really be all of that noticeable. So yeah, for me, prosthetic is just not worth it. Another common question that I get is if I kept my finger, or basically just asking in general what happened to my finger after my surgery. And I did not keep my finger, you guys. I know that there are a lot of people who are kind of into like the macabre and like would really want to keep that, but for me it was such a traumatizing situation, and I'm also not like a crazy like into gore kind of person. Like fake gore is one thing, but I do tend to be a little bit more on the squeamish side, and for me I definitely did not did not see any value in even asking to keep my finger. It was just not something that I even asked for or considered or anything like that. I did not want it. So it's probably sitting in like a medical garbage dump somewhere, rotting away right now. Or I don't know if they like incinerate that kind of stuff or what they do with it, but wherever they put body parts, it's there. Another question that I get all the time is if I finished the shelves that I was working on. And yes, I did finish those shelves. Actually, I didn't, but my dad and my mom came in town to help me and my husband out after I had my accident. And my dad's super, super handy. A lot of like my DIY creative kind of spirit has totally come from my parents because they're super DIYers. They've actually built 2 houses on their own, which is totally nuts. So when my dad was in town, he kind of took it upon himself to finish those shelves for me, as well as a couple of other woodworking projects that I really wanted done in my studio, which was so awesome. So yeah, that piece of wood that I cut my finger off on, it is currently in my studio being used as a shelf with products sitting on top of it. Can't let good materials go to waste, you guys. Another question that I get all the time is about my motor skills, if my handwriting has changed at all. And no, actually my handwriting is just as terrible now as it was before my accident, so nothing has changed about my handwriting. People ask me if I still use my saws. Initially after my accident, I thought that I might do some woodworking projects. I might use my saw again. I might use some of my saws again. I have definitely found that I'm way too triggered by it. The thought of approaching a saw right now is just terrifying. Maybe someday I'll get the itch to kind of do it. I don't know that I would ever use a table saw again. Circular saws and miter saws tend to be a lot safer. But at the same time right now, I just don't really feel excited about like doing those types of projects right now. I might leave the woodworking to the woodworking professionals going forward. One of the questions that you guys asked me was how somebody would approach someone like me and how they would go about like asking what happened. What I would say to that is just ask. Like honestly, just ask. It's so much better to ask than, have somebody just kind of like staring at you and you know that they're staring at you and you know that they want to ask and they're not asking and it's just uncomfortable and awkward and yeah, so just ask. What I would say about that is do that within reason. A stranger's situation isn't always your business. So if you see somebody like me, like in Target or something like that, I wouldn't just go up to a stranger and be like, hey, why are you missing your hand? Why are you missing your leg? Because it's kind of like people just want to like get through their day, without being harassed about everything. So I don't know that I would necessarily just walk up to a stranger and ask that question. But, if you started to get to know somebody and they had something like that, at that point, it would be fine. Like if I, had met somebody a couple of times and they asked me, hey, what's the story behind that? Why are you missing your finger? Definitely would not bother me at all. People also ask me if anybody has been weird to me or mean to me or anything like that. Almost everybody since this situation has just been extremely, extremely, extremely supportive. I had a few people online on my Instagram page initially who would accuse me of faking it because this happened in October of last year. So a lot of people thought that this was a Halloween prank. So I had a lot of people who were kind of like accusing, not a lot of people, like a few people who were accusing me of faking it. Obviously, when I started showing even more videos of my hand and stuff like that, especially when it was not bandaged up anymore, it was pretty apparent that it was not a joke. It was as serious as an amputated finger. One other really strange situation that I did have a woman who made an appointment with me just a couple of months after I was back working in my studio. And the way that I do my appointments for my new clients, for new color clients, is you can't just make a color appointment with me. You have to come in for a color consultation first. It just makes it easier for me to assess your hair, look at what you're wanting to do, and come up with a game plan that's really well thought out instead of me just trying to come up with something on the spot. So I have people come in for consultations. This woman came in, she had made an appointment for a consultation. She came in for that that appointment. And during that consultation, it was very apparent to me that the only reason why she made that consultation is she just wanted to come in and gawk at me. It was really kind of like a disgusting moment. I felt really gross about it afterwards. I went to go introduce myself to her, and I always shake hands with my right hand. That has not changed since me losing my finger. I don't feel weird about shaking people's hands. If you feel weird about me touching your hand with my hand, that's your problem. It's not my problem. I reached out to shake her hand and she recoiled from me. And she made a noise. She was like, ugh. When I kept my hand out, she did go in and grab my hand and shake it, but she just felt uncomfortable with me touching her with my hand. When I was talking to her, she only wanted to talk about my story and, you know, said she'd found me online. She mentioned a couple of things that she wanted to do with her hair, but I could just tell that she was just not interested in talking about her hair. And not only that, but she was staring at my hands the entire time. Like literally, I think there was maybe twice where she looked me in the eye. She was staring at my hand the entire time I had her there for her consultation. I can't even really remember what she said she wanted. I think she was wanting like balayage or something like that. Something natural, nothing too crazy. And at the end of her consultation, she did not want to book anything. So that pretty much reaffirmed to me, because 99% of the people who come in for consultations end up booking. Some people, when I tell them the price of certain things, they need some time to think about it, because some of the more crazy hair stuff, it definitely is more time consuming and therefore it is a little bit more expensive. And so I never have any problems with people who need to like go home, look at their budget and come up with a game plan if that's something that they're wanting to do. But this woman, you know, she was just wanting balayage. And usually when it's something natural like that, people always book right away when they come in for their consultations. But after that whole situation, I mean, I just felt really grossed out. I was like, this woman she did not come in at all with the intention of ever getting her hair done with me. It was literally just because she saw my story online and she wanted to come and stare at the freak show. Not to kink shame or anything like that, but because I am on the other side of this, there are people out there who have fetishes about amputations. This is something that I have gotten to know even more on YouTube. Just so you freaks out there know, I can see where you have added my videos to playlists, and my story time video, my amputation story time video, has been added to all of these different amputation and finger and toe amputation playlists, and I can see y'all doing that, you creeps. Just so you know. So yeah, I think she just had a little bit of a morbid curiosity, and she literally just wanted to come in and gawk at me, and that was really creepy. Most people treat me very, very normally. I've had a couple of instances at like grocery stores when I've reached out to like take change or something like that, and the cashier has dropped the change because they clearly were just taken aback by seeing my hand and stuff. It's definitely less common than it is common that something like that would happen, which is great. And I tend to have a pretty good attitude about it. When I come into contact with people who behave this way, my attitude is that's your problem, not my problem. So I'm pretty good about not internalizing that kind of icky behavior from people. Another question that I will get is about the scar that's on my wrist. You guys probably noticed in that clip I shared earlier of my bandage reveal, I also had stitches going down my wrist. And a lot of people ask if I cut my wrist when I cut my finger off as well. That cut was actually created during my second surgery. So after my amputation began to fail and I had to go in for my second emergency surgery to try and save it, they discovered a clot in my finger, which was what caused my finger to flatline. And typically with clots in arteries, they can just go in and they clear the artery out. They put something through the artery and basically just unplug it. But because those little veins and stuff inside of your fingers are so teeny tiny and delicate, they can't just like pipe clean it. Because it's so delicate, it would basically just tear those arteries to shreds. So what they had to do instead was they had to graft arteries from my wrist and use them in my finger to try and save my finger. So that is how I got that scar. Some people have asked me if I'm going to need any surgeries in the future. I did have one meeting with my surgeons after to discuss the possibility of something called a metacarpal shortening, otherwise known as a ray amputation. And what that pretty much would entail is they would remove this bone right here that's left in my hand to get rid of this little fun Quasimodo lump that's on my hand, and give me more of like a true like cartoon hand basically. So it'd make this look a little bit more like that. Supposedly to help it look a little bit more like streamlined, make it a little bit less noticeable. I was initially considering getting that surgery done, but I decided to wait a while after my recovery just to kind of assess the situation and see how things were with my hand currently before I made the decision to go under the knife again. And initially I did think that that was going to be something that I wanted done because I would smack that Quasimodo lump like on everything and it would just hurt. I mean, it's like stubbing your toe, like that level of pain. And because I have nerve damage in this little lump, especially initially, sometimes it was hard for me to sort of anticipate where that was when I would reach for things kind of like out of my line of sight. And that would be really painful and it was really annoying. And so I was like, maybe I should have this done. But now that I've been functioning with my hand for quite a while, I think that I've reached the conclusion that I'm not going to have the right amputation. I could still have that done at any time pretty much if it's something that I decide that I want to do in the future. But for right now, I kind of operate under the philosophy that the demon that you know is better than the demon that you don't know. And because I've gotten used to my hand function the way that it is, I don't necessarily know that I want to go under the knife again, because that's a serious thing. You know, definitely anytime you have a surgery and have to have anesthesia, like that is definitely not something to take lightly. And over time, I've kind of discovered that having this lump here actually gives me something to kind of like balance things on when I'm gripping stuff. So I don't really know that that's something that I want. So right now, there are no future surgeries planned. I do want to mention that in my initial story time video, I had a few people who were medical professionals who were kind of pissed at what I was saying and pissed for kind of implying that my occupational therapist was the reason why my reimplantation failed. A couple people said that I don't have any medical experience and I shouldn't be making accusations like that and I have no idea what I'm talking about. You know, it's important to understand that you guys don't always have the full picture of what went on. During my meeting with the surgeons, they did pass the buck on to the care team. They were the ones who said that it was the care team. They said that they did not understand why I was being fitted for a splint so early because I was supposed to be in the hospital for 5 to 7 days recovering, and they said there was no reason why I should have been fitted for a splint so soon. They said that they could have waited literally until the last day to do that because my arm was supposed to be up and suspended the entire time. So it wasn't like I was going to be moving anywhere that I needed protection that I needed to have that splint for. And you guys, it's not as if medical mistakes are this like incredible like unicorn of a thing that happens. There is a really crazy statistic, and I believe the statistic goes that the third most common cause of death in America is medical malpractice and medical mistakes. So it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that there was some kind of a miscommunication or something happened that ended up with me not getting the care that I was supposed to. My impression of this was they were so encouraged by the progress that I was making, like in the beginning. They were super, super confident that things were going to go well, that I was going to get my finger back. My surgeons told me during this meeting that when they have a patient to that point, this does not happen. The ambulance took me to the hospital they took me to because the hand specialists at this hospital are the best in Missouri. And so my impression of kind of what happened is it seemed to me like because they were so confident in the progress that I had made initially, I think that they wanted me out of that bed. I think that they wanted to get me out of that hospital. They thought that I was recovering faster, and so they were trying to push it a little bit too soon because they wanted the occupancy. They needed that bed. I mean, hospitals always need beds for other people. So that was kind of my impression of the situation. My surgeons were extremely, extremely upset, extremely disappointed. And they told me that they chastised the care team after this happened to me. They told them that it was unacceptable that my arm was down and out of heat for as long as it was. And so when I was saying that, this is not like some outlandish accusation that I came up with. These are things that I was led to believe from my own doctors. Now, all of that being said, one of the most common responses I got on that story time is a bunch of people telling me, you should sue. I hope you sued. I hope you sued this person. You should sue the therapist, blah, blah, blah. And initially after my accident, it was something that I did give a little bit of consideration to. I hadn't met with a lawyer. I still have not met with a lawyer. I may meet with a lawyer. I don't really know at this point. I still have a little bit of time to decide. But I had a lot of people saying stuff like, it's your responsibility to make sure that this doesn't happen to somebody else, and you should sue them so this doesn't happen to somebody else. And if you don't, then it's on you that this happens again, and blah, blah, blah. And first of all, like, come on, guys, please don't like guilt trip me like for this. It's not my responsibility. And as I said, my surgeons did tell me that they talked to the care team after this happened, and they told them what their mistakes that they made were. You know, in my line of work, I've made mistakes before. If you're a hairstylist, you'd be lying if you said that you didn't make some kind of a mistake on somebody's hair before that was pretty bad. So I don't know that suing is necessarily going to prevent or not prevent a mistake from happening again. This, like I said, was addressed by the surgeons to the care team. They were talked to about it. I don't know that me suing them would like further reiterate to that person that they need to do their job correctly. I'm sure after the surgeons guilt tripped this person about kind of being the reason why I lost my finger, that's not something that person is going to forget, and I am sure that they're going to do everything that they can to avoid making that mistake in the future. I can't imagine going through that and getting chastised like that and just acting carelessly in the future. For me, and I do have a couple of clients who are lawyers who have said that if I decided to pursue a lawsuit, they did think that I would probably have a case. So maybe you guys think I'm stupid for leaving money on the table like that. For me, the thing is, I am married. I make a decent income. My husband makes a decent income. I don't know that it would necessarily be worth it mentally for me to kind of go through this process of re-going through the story, rehashing the story again with lawyers and kind of dredging up like sort of like a righteous anger about it to pursue a lawsuit. And listen, I am by no means saying if you have had some kind of like a medical mistake happen to you and you feel compelled to sue the doctor for it or sue the hospital for it or sue whoever for it, I am by no means saying that you aren't justified in doing that and you are, you know, a bad person for doing that or anything like that. I do think that when it comes to stuff like that, there is sort of a little bit of like almost like a re-traumatizing that happens when you take things to court like that, because there's also a possibility that you could lose. So you could go through all this whole emotional process again just to have your heart broken. And for me, I just feel like right now I am in a mentally pretty decent place in all of this, and I have accepted what's happened to me, and I have accepted that, you know, I've had this change in my life, and for the most part I take a lot of responsibility for it. You know, I feel like there are definitely things that I could have done differently with the table saw that would have prevented me from having this accident in the first place. One major thing is I could have been using a push stick while I was using the table saw, which was stupid that I didn't. And you know, of course, accidents do happen, and I'm not saying that I'm sitting here like wallowing like, oh my God, what an idiot I am, although I did feel really, really stupid about it initially. But I have made peace with everything that has happened to me. And at the end of the day, no amount of money that I won in a lawsuit is going to bring back my finger. With all of that, I almost have more concerns with if for some reason I were to lose that lawsuit, after going through the process of kind of drumming up this re-anger at the whole situation and kind of reliving that whole situation, and I lost the lawsuit, like then how would I feel about it? You know, I just feel like mentally right now I am kind of in a good place with it. I've made peace with it. It is what it is, and I just don't know if that's, you know, what I want to pursue. I don't know that that's really what I want, you know, what I want to do with it. And, you know, that might seem like ridiculous to some people. Some people might think that that's just idiotic and I should absolutely sue the hospital, sue the care team, whatever. But at the end of the day, this is, you know, it's a personal decision. It's my decision to make. And this is just kind of where I'm at with it. You know, I may still talk to a lawyer just to see what they say. But, you know, for me, it's just not... It's definitely not about like trying to get money or milk this or whatever, you know. It's just that's not what I want to do with it. I'd rather almost just kind of let it go and kind of move on with my life. Again, if you were in the same situation, that might not be the decision that you make, but that's the decision that I've made so far. If I change my mind, if I talk to a lawyer and they just like really, really talk me into like going ahead and suing the hospital, like they think like, yes, you have like a super, super strong case and like none of this is gray, it's all black and white, and we do think that you have a very strong case, you know, maybe I will, and I will definitely update you guys if that happens. But for right now, it's just not something that I am like really have any desire to pursue. Like I said earlier in my video, I have just reached like a really, really big point of like thankfulness and gratefulness for what I have and where I'm at right now. And I just have always kind of felt like your mental energy, it's almost like a currency, and you choose what you spend that currency on, and you can make wise investments and you can make poor investments. And sometimes the investments that you think are going to be good investments for you, sometimes they're not very great investments for you. So I don't know that kind of, like I said, drumming up this righteous anger and going through this again would be a really great investment in my mental energy personally. If I were to sue somebody, this is going to take up so much of my time, so much of my mental energy, so much of my worry and questioning. And right now, I'm just grateful that I have the function that I have in my hand. Like I said, there's almost nothing that I can't do with my hand that I couldn't do before. And I am just really, really grateful to have that. And I just kind of feel like I really want to continue to sort of make peace with it and not drag this pain out any more than it needs to be dragged out, you know? I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe I am an idiot. Maybe I should sue or whatever, but like that's just kind of where I'm at mentally. And as I said, this is, you know, this is a personal choice and it is my personal choice. That all kind of leads into what I want to say next, which is I don't know that I'm going to really do any more updates about my hand or story times about my hand unless there's some kind of really, really crazy thing that happens that I'm just like, I really need to update people on this. Only because at this point, as I said, my hand is pretty much fully functioning and there's really nothing left to recover from. I didn't come on YouTube to milk my story. I didn't come on YouTube to depend on talking about, you know, cutting my finger off to kind of like get me further or whatever. I didn't really come on YouTube to, you know, really talk a lot about my hand. I really wanted to come on YouTube to do hair. Like I said in my James Charles video, it was something that I always thought about doing. I always thought about getting on YouTube. And if anything, this thing that happened to me just finally gave me that like fire under my ass to like put myself out there and finally pursue something that I had wanted to do for a long time. I put my original storytime video out there because I wanted to explain, you know, why I was missing my finger, because I knew I was going to get a lot of questions about it. Even though it's not super noticeable, people do notice it, especially in videos where, you know, the majority of what you're seeing is me using my hands. I do think that it is a part of me. I do think it's a part of my life story. I had one person give me flack on my James Charles video about using my sob story to get ahead instead of, you know, showing my skills or whatever. I think, you know, if you've been following me up to this point, you know that in my videos, it's not something that I bring up. I really do try to make my content focused about my hair and what I'm doing and the creativity and everything like that. It's definitely not something that I've tried to put in the spotlight or the forefront. It's something that I talked about in that video because it is a part of my story, and it's a part of the reason why I ended up on YouTube in the first place. But it's never been the thing that I wanted to sort of be my identifying thing. You know, I never really wanted to be like that hairstylist with the missing finger. I wanted to be that person who does like the creative hair and the creative color. I just wanted to show off what I was passionate about. You know, I just wanted to share with you guys like my love for hair and beauty and all of that stuff. And that's what I want to continue to do. That's what I want to make my focus on. I don't really want to take away from that by like just constantly kind of like dragging up this thing, you know, because like to me it's sort of irrelevant at this point. To me it's just not, it's like a not thing at this point. At the risk of sounding like a total Hallmark card again, I really just am very, very grateful for what I have. I'm grateful for the function of my hand, and I want to use my YouTube channel to focus on creating and to focus on using my hand instead of talking about my hand. I don't really want to like continue to like wallow in it. And you know, I totally get why people are curious about it. I totally get why people have questions about it, and I'm still happy to answer those questions. And in fact, if there's anything that I didn't address in this video, please leave a question, your questions, whatever it is, down below, and I will answer as many questions as I can get to. But yeah, as of right now, I just want to kind of focus on doing cool hair, serving some cool looks, and just, you know, doing what I've been doing on YouTube. The most flattering thing that I get is the comments that say, holy crap, I didn't even notice your finger was missing. Somebody will watch a video completely and then they will go to the comments, and that's when they realize that I'm missing a finger because somebody else made a comment about it. So I'll see comments like, I watched this entire video and I didn't even realize she was missing a finger. It's just not on the forefront of what I'm doing, and I don't intend to make it the forefront of what I'm talking about. It just is kind of like this crazy thing that happened to me. It's really wild, but at the end of the day, it's not my identity. That being said, I just don't want to come across as ungrateful for the support and everything like that. You know, people have just been so kind to me since this happened. I felt like such a moron when I did this to myself, and the outpouring of support that I got and continue to get from people, it blows my mind that like strangers who don't know you on the internet care so much about what happens to you. It's insane, and I'm so grateful for it. But I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I, like I said, have made peace with everything that's happened. I don't feel sorry for myself at all. I have a great normal life, and my hand is very, very functional, and I'm just very, very grateful for everything. Hop off camera really quick to do all my other little detail eye work that I can't talk and do at the same time because I'm not that good. Here are my lovely little rainbow eyes. These were like a lot of fun to do. Just got a couple of new Colourpop palettes, and I'm loving them so much. I feel like I just want to go on like a huge Colourpop shopping spree now. And by the way, I will have the products that I use listed in the description box below this video if you have any questions about what I used on my face today. But in conclusion of this whole crazy ordeal, as I said, I don't think I'm going to have any further updates about my hand unless something for whatever reason changes. I will definitely let you guys know. But I feel like I've really addressed everything there is to address at this point. And if you have any questions, as I said, drop them down below. I'm happy to answer your questions. Moving forward, I don't know if you guys like me doing this like get ready with me format. A couple of you guys mentioned in my James Charles video that you thought it'd be cool for me to do other get ready with me's, and you kind of like the sit down talking, chatting kind of thing. And I'm happy to do them. Let me know if that's something that you want to see in the future. I can talk about a variety of other subjects, but moving forward, we're definitely going to be back on track with showing more of the hair stuff, because I know that's what most of you guys came for, is the hair stuff. And I do have a couple of really cool tutorials in the works for you guys, and I have come up with a really, really great idea that I'm going to be kind of like launching soon on my channel. So if you like really weird hair stuff, if you like beauty, if you like just weird aesthetic shit, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. I want to let you guys know that this month has been like absolutely insane. I think in the past month I've gained like 20,000 subscribers. Like, it's been absolutely insane, and it just blows my mind. I feel very, very blessed to have you guys as an audience here and have you guys really enjoying the content that I'm making. Like I said, I am super, super passionate about what I do. I'm very passionate about hair. I love hair. I love doing it. I'm so glad that I'm still able to do what I love to do. And I want to focus on continuing to do what I love to do. And I'm really grateful for you guys being here on this journey with me and, you know, really loving what I love and being able to share with you guys who are also passionate about this. It's been so much fun. So I wanted to add that here too, not to get like super, super sappy. Before I came on YouTube, I was on Instagram for a really long time. And, you know, I do think that there is a difference in the way that audiences engage. I've noticed here on YouTube versus on Instagram. And I just have really, really enjoyed engaging with you guys and talking with you guys and sharing all the fun hair stuff. So I hope that you guys will continue to watch my videos, even if they're not hand related. Oh my gosh, it's always so hard to end these videos. But thank you guys so much for joining me today for watching my update. I hope that it answered a lot of your questions, and I will see you guys in the next one.